2 weeks of high school football officially in the books, and so far 21 teams still perfect through the regular season. However, tonight only 10 can make our WKBN Power Rankings, Chad.
Last week's top 4 teams all faced off last week, and that certainly shook things up in this week's rankings.
Well, let's get right to it. Our number 10 ranked team heading into week number 3, Cardinal MOONEY.
The Cardinals suffered a tough loss to 3-time defending state champion Akron-Holben by a final score of 42-13. As a result, the Cardinals dropped 5 spots to number 10. MOONEY will have its first 6 games at home, and coming up next week, a date with Columbus DeSales.
Our number 9 ranked team this week, the Boardman Spartans. Of course, they were winners on the road at Howland with a 31-17 victory over the Tigers. The Spartans forced 6 turnovers in that game, and they were able to win without quarterback Michael Lahoro. Next up for them will be Massillon Jackson on the schedule. Moving on, our number 8 ranked team heading into this week, Western Reserve.
The Blue Devils are up 1 spot this week. Ryan Slavin with 4 touchdowns. Adam Gatrell, a $180 on the ground in a 41-19 win over the Bulldogs from East Palestine.
Our number 7 team in the power rankings this week, the Wilmington Greyhounds. Of course, they came off a tough loss to Farrell, one in which they outrushed, outpassed, outgained the Steelers in total yards. The big difference in that game was turnovers and a big play on special teams. We'll see if the Hounds can bounce back against Northwestern this Friday night. Moving on, our number 6 ranked team this week, GIRARD.
The Indians dropped 2 spots after a classic game of the week. They suffered the setback to Hubbard. Although they did rally from a 21-0 deficit, they made it a 1-point game in the second half. Their next 5 opponents are a combined 1-9, and certainly not much of a strength of schedule with a weak schedule like that.
Right. Coming in at number 5 this week, the Grove City Eagles. And boy, have they been pouring it on. Up 5 spots from number 10 to number 5, thanks to 2 dominating performances. They won by 41 points in week number 1 against Fort LaBeouf, won by 54 points last week against Greenville. They haven't allowed a single point through the first 3 quarters of each game this season. Moving on, our number 4 ranked team heading into week number 3, McDonald.
The Blue Devils are up 2 spots here this week, avenging a loss to Columbiana, 42-35. Josh Selly, 160 rushing yards. Alex Cintron, a $180 on the ground. This team has scored 90 points in the first 2 weeks of the season. Their next 2 games are against squads without a win. Springfield is their date in week 5.
At number 3 this week, another team that's screaming up the power rankings, the LABRAE Vikings. LABRAE with that 55-14 victory over Warren JFK last Friday night. Their first win over the Eagles in 4 years. They're up 5 spots this week because they can light up the scoreboard. Kent Wolford, 250 yards passing, another 130 plus on the ground, 7 total touchdowns for the senior quarterback. The Vikings have scored 96 points in 2 weeks, Chad. And speaking of teams that can light up the scoreboard, that brings us to number 2, the Hubbard Eagles.
What a signature win it was for the Eagles in our WKBN Game of the Week. A huge 48-32 win over Girard. This Hubbard squad has put up 111 points in the first 2 games of the season. What can you say about Davion Daniels? 220 rushing yards last week, a $110 through the air. He accounted for 4 total touchdowns as the Eagles move up 1 spot this week.
And of course, that brings us to our number 1 ranked team heading into week 3 of the high school football season. No surprise, the FARRELL Steelers. They are coming off that big win against Wilmington last Friday night and regain the top spot in our power rankings. The Steelers put up 31 points last Friday night on a Wilmington team that didn't allow 31 points during the entire regular season last year. FARRELL is the number 1 team in the state and the number 1 team in our power rankings. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday for an updated look at our WKBN Power Rankings.